Hey everybody, it's Viviana and Carson with the Live Realty Group. We are here in Sylvan Lake at our office, and this is our weekly chit chat.
Our powwow?
Yeah.
Weekly powwow? Yeah, we had a crazy week last week with some buyers and sellers not agreeing on closing time.
Yeah, we had some lawyer arguments, not between us, but the two lawyers together did not see eye to eye. I did not see eye to eye with the other realtor on the other end either. And all in all, it was just sort of unnecessary stress for our seller.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
Now, that was all because there was a walkthrough prior to closing to check the property and make sure everything was meeting standards or meeting the contract. And the buyer didn't like that walkthrough the night before because there were still items in the house. So they wanted to do it the next day as well. And the sellers didn't agree to that.
Yeah, so the house was 90% empty. The buyer wanted a totally vacant property, which wasn't reasonable because she knew that the sellers were moving on the same day into their next house.
Well, and it wasn't in the contract that it needed to be vacant either.
No, it was just a property walkthrough to make sure that the chattels were all there and to make sure that all the appliances were there as well.
Or no holes in the walls.
No holes in the walls, yeah, just to make sure that the property is in substantially the same condition as it was when she made an offer, which is also protected as a default term in the contract anyways.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so you can seek remedies, it's in there.
It's just with the walkthrough, it allows the buyer, gives them peace of mind, allows them to see the property prior to closing so that they know they don't have to go and seek remedies. They can do it right then and there prior to closing.
Yeah, lawyers are totally divided on this one, just like they are on RPR title insurance. The sellers will always hate the final walkthrough, they'll always advise against it, and the buyer lawyers will always push for the final walkthrough.
Well, how do you feel as a seller's representative with walkthroughs?
So on vacant houses, I'm all for it. Go for it. It's a vacant house. Nobody's touching the house to begin with. They're checking on it maybe once a week, maybe once every couple of days. Nothing changes. When there's people living in the house, I'm okay with that walkthrough as well, but ultimately it's up to the seller. It's not up to me.
Right.
I know that nothing is going to change on a vacant property.
Well, you can't say you know, but you can assume. And more than likely, nothing's going to change.
You know what assuming makes.
Yes, we do. Asses out of you and me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, buyer walkthroughs are pretty standard in southern Alberta anyways, not really in central Alberta. I mean, I've gotten away with a ton of walkthroughs as a buyer agent in central Alberta, but I've come up against a lot of sellers that say no.
Well, I mean, if both parties are acting in good faith, it really shouldn't be an issue. But there's so many different people out there, and so many people have different emotions when it comes to buying a house. Do they have cold feet? And I think the seller's lawyers just look at it as a way for people to bring up issues, or try to get out of the contract.
Or try and get more money out of the contract and have things that probably don't need to be fixed to be fixed.
Right, because I didn't notice it the first time.
Yes, exactly. I didn't know the wear and tear on the banister. You have to fix that. We're withholding $1,000 for,
I wouldn't say that that's a typical thing that happens, though. Majority of the time, I mean, we've done some walkthroughs, and it's normally written in the contract already that such and such item has to be repaired by a professional with receipts provided prior to closing. This way, the buyer knows that it's taken care of, and the lawyer is comfortable with it, and the buyers typically trust the lawyers.
Yeah.
I know that not everybody trusts their realtors, which is kind of not the greatest thing for us, but we're definitely always there on our client's best interest.
There are some realtors who are way better and way more experienced and can handle these situations a whole lot better than other realtors.
That's true.
So I get that. I get where, some buyers are coming from where they're like, oh my gosh, they did nothing for me. But, I get from the seller's lawyer perspective where if you write a contract properly with solid terms in there and you cover all the bases, you don't need that walkthrough. It's unnecessary.
That's right, because it's already covered under the contract outside of the additional terms that we're going to add in, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of a pain in the ass when something unforeseen sort of pops up after you move in. Like maybe you realize, hey, the stove doesn't work as properly as I thought it did. It's kind of on and off and whatever. And then you try and go after the seller for something after the fact. It's almost impossible. And is it even worth it to go through court and spend that money on your lawyer to try and retrieve a couple $100? Probably not.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a good time to have these walkthroughs too, though, is when properties are tenanted, because tenants don't take the same care of the property that a homeowner does, especially during move out, right? Like the property's not their responsibility, or sure, the landlord can go after the tenant for repairs, but now it's just a whole cat and mouse game between the tenant, the seller, and the buyer, and it's just easier to have that walkthrough done prior.
Yeah, it's so much less of a pain in the ass to know what you're up against and kind of circumvent these issues if you need to, rather than fight after the fact, after all the money has been passed over from the buyer to the seller, and then it's kind of a done deal. You don't really have much recourse after that.
Right.
But yeah, tenants, I mean, especially if there's some bad blood there with how they got served their notice, or if they feel like, man, you served me my notice right before Christmas. How many of those tenants do we know this year that happened? And all of a sudden by March they got to be out.
Yeah.
Another salty about it.
Another not great scenario too is you had a really crazy one.
Oh my gosh.
About a divorce situation.
Yeah. So I was representing the buyer on this one. The ex-husband didn't live there. He was paying for the ex-wife to live there, and she was totally unreasonable throughout the entire transaction. Wouldn't let us in the house even though, we had scheduled times to go through. It was pretty bad. Yeah, I represented the buyers on this one. The seller was very unreasonable, and it was very obvious that she was just digging in their heels because she didn't want to move. And she was the ex-wife. She didn't have to pay for the place. It was a pigsty.
And she didn't even let you in the walkthrough that was in the contract, right?
No, she everything that we had contractually agreed upon in Section 9.2 of her purchase contract, she just went against. And her lawyer was trying to talk some sense into her, but she wasn't even answering any of her calls for the realtor, for the lawyer, all that kind of stuff. So it was a nightmare dealing with this one. And we had a buyer walkthrough scheduled for the night before, 8 p.m. I was to go there and, not ruffle feathers. Buyer wasn't going to be there, so it wasn't going to be stressful for everybody. And she locked me out and said, F off, basically. So the next morning, I had already told the buyer lawyer not to send the money until we got our walkthrough, because I had my sneaking suspicions that she hadn't moved out. Yeah, she hadn't even packed.
Yeah, that's nuts. And then you had a holdback in there for like $10,000.
Yeah.
And didn't they use the entire amount just moving this woman?
Shy of $60. They used almost $10,000 to get this woman out of there. We had to get the police involved. There was a court order for her to go. It was a mess. The RCMP was really, really good about it. So I was like, good on them.
Now, we got to say, this is not a typical situation where the seller won't leave their house. That's not normal. This is definitely a 1 in a million thing that happens, but these are the reasons for certain situations where you want to have that buyer walkthrough in place, no matter what the seller lawyer says.
Yeah, my radar is up now because of that one experience. It's like, okay, well, now I know that a $10,000 holdback is probably okay, but we're always going to ask for 15, 20 now.
Right.
If that ever happens again where I'm alerted and I'm like, I don't think this lady's moving out, or a tenant, I don't think the tenant's moving out, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But there are other situations where I would always ask for a walkthrough, or at least receipts and invoices as proof of work completed.
Right. That's a more common practice is writing in that this work needs to be done by a certified professional with receipts provided prior to closing. That way the work is done.
Yeah.
You have your proof. You don't have your visual proof, but you have proof.
I always ask for videos as well and pictures as proof.
Right.
In addition to the receipts and the invoices as proof of work completed. But I think we, as a whole, write contracts better in Central Alberta than the contracts that I've seen when we've dealt with people, agents in the south of Alberta.
Okay.
Maybe just because there's so many more agents down there. That's just kind of the trend that I see. And super dirty homes. If there's a super dirty home, I'll ask for a walkthrough. We'll usually put into the contract that we get a professional cleaning done.
Yeah, but it's funny because there's different levels of cleaning.
Yes, there's different standards. It's subjective.
Like there's times where you can tell that they brought a cleaner in. You have the receipt, but at what level did they go? How many hours did they pay for? Like, did they pay for 2 hours? Or did they pay for an entire day?
I had a client pay for dog poop cleaning for a closing. Like, my seller client paid for and submitted receipts, and the lady did her walkthrough the night before and she was like, there's dog poop everywhere, and guess who had to clean it? Because my seller is now moved cities.
You did.
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that one.
Yeah, that was rough.
Dog poop is it's a funny one, but especially when it comes up at winter time.
Yes.
Because that dog is going out there all winter, they're covered in snow. You don't know how much. Man, there was one, it was so bad, and we didn't foresee that to the level that you did. And it was horrible. Like,
Grenades everywhere.
dog poop farm, just brutal and just stinks.
Ugh, that's so gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, springtime for dog poop cleaning. Like, I think everyone in our office is so much more aware of that now. Mm-hmm. Even if you've just gone through it once, you'll never ever not protect your buyer.
No, it's
after
a super minor thing, but it's something that nobody wants to deal with.
Yeah, and it makes such a huge difference on that mindset when you move into that house.
Yeah.
That's just one ugly, dirty, disgusting thing that you don't have to worry about anymore, and you're a lot more peaceful moving in, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so representing a buyer, this is the only time that I think a buyer walkthrough is probably detrimental to the buyer, is when I know that home has been professionally staged.
Right, because they walk into that house, they fall in love with the atmosphere, not just the
energy, the atmosphere, everything looks perfect.
Yeah.
And you're kind of not distracted by how it looks cosmetically, but you fall in love instantly.
Yeah, real estate's an emotional business, and people fall in love with the house as it's presented.
Yeah.
Then you move all the fancy furniture out, and then the house has a total different feel to it.
Yeah, it's not alive anymore.
No.
So the buyer might walk into it all of a sudden doing the walkthrough, and they notice all these other things that they didn't notice before.
And they're disappointed in the house.
Yeah,
This is kind of like a cold feet syndrome sort of thing.
Yeah. Buyers get cold feet.
Yes, they do.
Especially, I think, first-time home buyers, it's really, it's an emotional thing. Letting go of so much money, it's a huge purchase. And sometimes you're just not sure if you're making the right decision or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you feel when you bought your house? That was a first-time home purchase.
You know, I was so excited the day of. Yeah, got my house, moving in, blah, blah, blah. Open the door, go inside, and it's uneventful.
It's like a 40th birthday.
It was super uneventful. It's totally a 40th birthday. Oh yeah, whatever.
It's just another day.
Yeah. Thanks for aging me. I'm sure my wrinkles do it
That's
well
okay.
enough.
All my gray hair, I'm sure. Yeah. That's okay. But yeah, condition of the house, I think, is subjective. Mm-hmm. And these buyer walkthroughs just make everybody nervous, because what if you're dealing with an unreasonable buyer who's just going to nitpick over small, silly things that you would never even agree to as a seller on that first offer?
Yeah, absolutely. The buyer's lawyer love them because it protects the buyer. The seller's lawyer hates them because it just opens a door for potential conflict.
Yeah.
So I get both sides of the story. It's, do you do it? Do you not do it? I understand.
I wonder what you guys think about buyer walkthroughs, final walkthroughs. Have you done them? Are you a seller? Are you nervous about them? Do you have questions?
Yeah. What would you allow that as a seller? Would you allow somebody to do a walkthrough just before closing to make sure everything was good? I'm sure some of you will, some of you won't. And then buyers, is it something that you need to know prior to making that purchase go through?
Yeah, let us know. And join us next week if you want topical conversation, some chit chat between some realtors in Central Alberta. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.